We all wish us a powerful evening. Last night, a massive strike was carried out on a number of Ukrainian cities, military facilities, and civilian targets. And now I'll show you. I've just gathered complete information about what was destroyed, where there were problems, and what was damaged. And here there's a ton of material. For example, on Telegram there's a map showing once again the cities that were affected by the raid. Dnipro, Zaporizhzhia, Poltava, Kharkiv, and Sumy. In short, a huge number of regional centers and Kyiv. Before we begin, there will still be a spoonful of honey in this barrel of tar, namely resistance to the TCC guys, because, well, it's really happening all over the country. Even though you say my headlines are clickbait, you can really feel that more and more people are resisting the manhunters. If before there was just one case every couple of months and it made noise everywhere. And whoever says, the broader the Ukrainians, now all this happens much more often. And for example, organized resistance is no longer a rarity. For example, the workers, I think from Medinvest, at least one of the supervisors has a uniform from that organization. Well, they come down to talk holding crowbars in their hands and all sorts of log splitters and things like that. And they stand there not being very polite. These TCC guys try to act tough at first, but there's no way to fight against a crowbar. And I think they understand that perfectly well. I'm not showing everything because there's a lot of strong language here, and YouTube doesn't tolerate swearing and violence. And by the way, some of you told me that some bloggers do show swearing and violence. Well, let them show it. As my wise grandmother used to say, if they take off their underwear, does that mean you should too? Of course not. That's why I'm showing you this. Everything is right here. And if you want to watch the whole thing, you can find it right here on my Telegram channel. The full video is there, almost 3 minutes of pure pleasure. You just tap, point your smartphone or tablet camera at this QR code and you'll get exactly where you need to go. Or you can go to the description of this video, right here where I'm pointing. My Telegram channel is right there and you can go straight to it. Well, now let's go see what kind of destruction there is. First, about the destruction in Ukraine. In Kyiv, they're telling us there are dozens of people injured, in other cities as well. Here is a complete map of aerial targets over Ukraine, and there are quite a lot of them. There are even more of them, as I was showing you. Some regional centers were affected, even those that weren't on this map. The main target is Kyiv. The Russian troops used more than 40 missiles of various types and up to 300 drones. It is reported that around 650 drones and several dozen missiles were used against Ukraine. On June 2, Kyiv suffered greatly. The main source of information for most media outlets was Klitschko. Around 2 a.m., he urged residents to stay in shelters because there were indeed explosions in the city and air defense forces were operating. At first, there were fires in Podil and in the Obolonsky district. The area of a non-residential building caught fire. There was also damage to civilian buildings. Some residential complexes were hit, including elite ones. Are they considered decision-making centers? Well, maybe, of course, someone who takes part in decision-making lives there. But all the previous centers that we consider to be real centers are intact. In the Obolonsky district, cars caught fire. The Shevchenkivsky district suffered the most serious damage. Here, debris and probably missiles hit both non-residential buildings and a residential building, as we've been told. In one of the 24-story buildings, there's the fire. In the Sviatoshinsky district, there are fires in non-residential areas. In a 5-story residential building, in the Solomiansky district, debris damaged the upper floors of a 15-story building. The Holosivsky district was affected. As a result, the clinic was partially destroyed. The building's second and third floors collapsed. Cars, shopping pavilions, and other facilities were also on fire. In the Darnitsky district, a fire also broke out at a gas station due to falling debris. There were power outages in the Podilsky, Obolonsky, and Sviatoshinsky districts. Here we have a car dealership. I'll show you a video of it as well. Some cars there, surprisingly, were not damaged, even though, as we can see, it burned out. Dnipro was hit as well on June 2nd. There was also severe destruction. The strike happened during the night of June 2nd. Again, there was a fire, extensive destruction, and casualties. A 2-story residential building, for example, was destroyed. There was a fire there. A 4-story building, the same thing. Apparently, it was also a decision-making center. One of the victims is a 73-year-old woman who was hospitalized in serious condition. The total number of injured in Dnipro is 25 people, and 2 people, as far as I remember, died. It's not mentioned here yet. Also, the attack on Kharkiv. There are fires here as well. The energy infrastructure was affected, civilian facilities, industrial facilities, an administrative building on the territory of a kindergarten, and others. In Zaporizhia, there was also massive destruction. Here we had both cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, attack drones. For example, an industrial facility in the regional center was hit with strikes targeting the city's industrial center. And explosions continued for several more hours, so you shouldn't think that they struck once and that was it. No. My acquaintances in Zaporizhia told me the same thing. It's terrible. Nothing like this has happened before. And on the Telegram channel I mentioned earlier, they also talked a lot about what's happening. A list of industrial facilities. I also compiled it in the Telegram channel. Here it shows what was damaged there. This is our recruitment center. So the Central Committee staff, Ukroboronprom, the factory, the concrete plant, the car workshop, the Nova Pochta warehouse, the industrial zone on Vasilkivska Street, and much more. There's a lot here. These are actually quite large. Among them are industrial facilities, but also the trolleybus depot and the Nova Pochta warehouse. Those are attack targets. I don't know why they were chosen. Maybe there was a reason, or it could have been a mistake. All this led to massive destruction, plus, well, not exactly a social catastrophe, but still, people are facing problems. Because that night, 41,000 people gathered in the subway in Kyiv. The subway can't accommodate everyone anymore because it's overcrowded. It's not like before when people also hid there during the Great Patriotic War. Well, wherever there was a subway, of course, wherever there was a metro system. Back then, there were far fewer people than there are now. And in the cities, I mean the big ones, there were a lot of people too. But not tens of millions, or almost hundreds. Okay, hundreds is an exaggeration. That's in China. But still. Here they're telling us that in Kyiv, this is a record crowd of people. And there wasn't enough space for many. Some people are setting up tents. Alright, some are small, but some people set up big ones. And then there isn't enough space for people to sit or lie down. 1/10. Children. And there's a problem with all of this, because naturally there's also the social aspect, that is, safety. The same goes for sewage, food supplies, everything. These are all problems. The subway only opens during an air raid alert. We're told that's when all the entrances to the platforms are open. That's exactly what happened that night. And to get there, you need to arrive before closing. Notify the police and staff. Go out onto the platform and settle in the spot indicated by the assistants. But the area for people to settle in is limited. And that's exactly the problem. Because there are just so many people. And there aren't enough spots. The shelters that were built there before, of course, the budget was spent, they reported on them, but what, where, and when, it's still unknown. But supposedly a lot of things were built there. And then suddenly they kind of stopped talking about those facilities. The ones they used to talk about before, I mean protective infrastructure for people where you can hide in a bomb shelter, some of them are probably closed. Let me know in the comments if you live in a large Ukrainian city with bomb shelters. What's the situation with them? Are they all open like before? Or are some of them not working? Or maybe none of them are working at all? Write about it because this all needs to be talked about. And I'll talk about it in one of my videos. Or you can also email me. It's on the main page of my YouTube channel. There you click on About the Channel, and it appears there. Contacts, including my email, of course. Now about Ukraine attacking Russia. This wheel keeps turning all the time. Some are shelling, others are shelling back. For them it's retaliation, for the other side it's retaliation too. Well, in the end, retaliation leads to major nightly exchanges of fire. On June 2nd, the Ukrainian armed forces also struck a number of Russian military and industrial targets, including the largest oil refinery, a petroleum processing plant in the south of the country. The General Staff confirmed the strike on this largest oil refinery, Ilyinsky, in the Krasnodar region. A fire was reported on the plant's territory. And this enterprise processes 6.6 million tons of oil per year. The plant produces products. It is used in particular to meet the needs of the Russian army, and in fact an oil refinery is a facility that naturally has military significance in any case. In addition, some kind of Panzer S-1 missile and gun system was hit. Around it something is visible. Then in general many other targets were also hit. They say that some industrial facilities besides the oil refinery were also hit, and also some ships. This happened in the area near Mezhvodnoye in Crimea. Next, that's about the strikes. So, shelling is happening on both sides. There's little hope for peace so far. I mentioned that Trump is procrastinating and doesn't want to negotiate with Russia or Ukraine because he doesn't see the point, but there are also some special efforts going on. This Vitkov keeps showing up on his behalf along with his son-in-law Kushner. Not Vitkov's son-in-law, but Trump's son-in-law. And the only position that Kushner has is being Trump's son-in-law. Nepotism, of course, has nothing to do with today's reality. And as a result, these two people keep coming to Moscow. They try to negotiate something with them. It seems like they're talking about something. In particular, the same envoy. From Putin, Ushakov. But nothing good comes out of it. And in Russia, they've already stated that they're tired of this kind of negotiations too. When two people come, you talk to them. Well, it feels like these talks are going nowhere. In other words, these conversations are wasted. That's why now they want to resume the old format, where there are permanent teams of negotiators. They communicate, come to the table with a list of demands. Gradually, they synchronize them. And in the end, a consolidated document is produced which can then be signed by the powers that be. That's how it always worked. I don't know why they abandoned it. The US came up with this shuttle diplomacy, where representatives of Ukraine sit in one office. In another office, representatives of Russia are sitting, and the US representatives move back and forth between them. Of course, it's a bit like a game of telephone. Yes, this method was used before. But again, nowadays, such means of communication or negotiation are probably not as effective as they used to be. In the past, maybe there simply was no choice. But now there is. Now look, delegations have met before. They have met. Why can't they meet again? I don't know. Maybe some higher matters don't allow it. But then it goes further into the legislative aspect in Ukraine. Suddenly the situation appears, and the scenario I mentioned earlier is being realized. When the military comes to power, it's military Ukraine. And if you think these are some kind of combat officers or soldiers, I beg you, when has that ever happened? Sometimes, of course, it did, but that's extremely rare. Now all these barbershop big heads, Ukilisis and others like them are coming to power, and that's where they're fighting. Again, it's with those dumplings, pies, dolma, pilaf, and whatever else God in restaurants called friend. And ikipi. Of course, they don't forget to overcome water obstacles and also fight with certain types of drinks. That's a struggle too. It's not just for life, it's to the death. So these figures are slowly making their way into power. And now we're already being told that the military, of course the draft offices are also considered military, are being asked to help write the law in the Verkhovna Rada. But can you imagine what happens when a person who has nothing to do with jurisprudence, lawmaking or management, someone who, in peaceful administrative life, ends up in such a position and starts making laws? A good example is this Cossack Havrilyuk, who came in and didn't have any education at all. Nothing. The poor guy just sat there trying to find familiar letters in the Constitution, but couldn't find any. And after a while, he started buying things. He bought himself a house, divorced his wife, and bought a fancy car. Of course, all of this wasn't from his deputy salary. Then there are all those athletes and singers. The singers with their mouths and other body parts too. All of them. Right now, 450 loafers are sitting there and only a few of them say anything. And an even smaller percentage of those few, probably less than 1%, actually do something real. And it's not even a fact that they're doing something good for themselves. Maybe it's good for those they're connected with. In business, That's not bad either. But for ordinary people, oh. So now they want to assign 2 officer advisors to each deputy. But if this isn't democracy, then correct me if I'm wrong. It seems to me that in any country, every legislator and lawmaker has 2 military officers who tell them, program here. There's even a meme like that. Program, come on, program. Intellectuals are just a disaster. And you can imagine if the laws have already been chopped up to such an extent that you can't put anything together from these scraps except for some kind of legislative Frankenstein. What the military might still do, that'll be interesting to see. Well, it would all be funny, of course, if it weren't so sad, but still. So, in the Verkhovna Rada, they registered Bill number 15,285 about the introduction. God, it has a very long title, so let me not read it out loud. Now, a new institution of military advisors to a Ukrainian MP is being introduced. By the way, these loafers also have assistants. who are just as lazy, but they also get a salary and have some subsidies. There, free travel back and forth, whitewashing, painting, and as a result, the number of these loafers increases, well, I think up to about 4,000. It's just that if you take the entire staff of the Verkhovna Rada, it might even be more. If anyone knows better than me, tell me exactly how many of these servants of the law are there along with their assistants. Now, each will get 2 more assistants, totaling 450 plus 900 more assistants. I don't know where they'll find so many barbershop workers, but they'll probably find them somewhere. In short, we're talking about the possibility of bringing in current bathhouse workers, you know, those who of course work in studios with fancy coffee pretty girls, and who suddenly end up with new apartments. And now they're all talking about national security, defense, intelligence, and parliamentary oversight of the security forces. This project was developed during the ongoing Russian Federation aggression against Ukraine. Right away, just so you don't have any doubts that this is meant to fight against the Russian Federation, here are these 2 additional freeloaders on top of the ones we already have. They're telling us it's mandatory, this is a fight. Apparently, these are some kind of partisans who will be acting like guerrillas in the Rada, writing some kind of partisan laws, fighting the enemy, sinking their teeth into the enemy's flesh. As one of the characters in a film about the Bolsheviks said, I don't remember which one he was, I can't show that clip. So, in the explanatory note, it says that the purpose of the initiative is to use the practical experience of military personnel when preparing legislative decisions in the areas of national security, defense, intelligence, and military service. Here, most likely, such humane laws will be implemented in order to improve the standard and quality of people's lives. Like conscription into the army, like preparing soldiers and nurses from childhood and forcing anyone they want. Students will be distracted from their studies. It has already been said that they are planning to close some universities because, well, there aren't enough people to fill them. And in general, why would a soldier or an ordinary serviceman need science or higher education? Who needs that anyway? You take a rifle and go forward. Do what your commanding officer tells you, act, run ahead, take as much as you can, throw it as far as you can from the fence until lunchtime and so on. It's like that saying, if it's square, push it, if it's round, roll it. Well, I guess that's pretty much what these lawmakers will be doing. Now about the bill. Here are the details about this new institution of military advisors to a Ukrainian member of parliament. Of course, more money will need to be allocated for this. A military advisor can be an officer with at least 5 years of service, but all these barbershop guys, I think they've already got about 5 years under their belts. They might claim 15, 20, or even 25 years, but based on their looks, you wouldn't believe they served that long. And he claims achievements for 30, 35, even 40 years, including fighting against Rukhan and other envoys, let's say, of the Golden Horde. Well, it's quite an interesting event, to say the least. There will even be guarantees, and they'll change some laws just for them. It's just a circus. And unfortunately, we live in this circus. So what? And one last thing here. Earlier, I talked about the initiative in Europe to strip men from Ukraine living in Europe of their refugee status. That's not going to happen. This contradicts all European legislative acts. But this concerns those who have already arrived in Europe, live there, and have received refugee status. This law is going to be introduced specifically for newly arrived individuals. That means Ukrainian men may lose temporary protection in Europe. Only newly arrived Ukrainians. It's not even about losing it, but rather not receiving it, specifically men of mobilization age, of course. Possibly, the change in temporary protection rules for Ukrainians in the EU currently only applies to future applicants, not to those Ukrainian citizens who are already under protection in EU countries, as we are told. Well, actually, after that, it just repeats what's already been said. And as you know, repetition is the mother of learning. You probably don't know the second part. It's consolation for a fool. So we won't be consoling ourselves since we're smart, and instead let's take a look at some powerful leaders. Here, for example, suddenly we see Lutsenko appear on our screens. Yura, let's say, is telling Svetlana Orlovskaya about how Oreshnik is not dangerous. Already the third, I think, barbershop leader in a row who says that Oreshnik is not dangerous at all. Yes, according to Yuri, nuclear weapons are not dangerous. He would be at the epicenter, it seems, with a knife in his teeth, overcoming atomic fission, gathering all the atoms back together. He'll swallow all the radioactive materials safely. That's how effective he is as a decontaminator. This doll can be smashed repeatedly by the Ukrainian decontaminator's sticks.
That he can break the resilience of the Ukrainian people.
Yeah, even nuclear weapons won't break it. Especially, well, okay, there's also Yura Lutsenko, but when that guy, what's his name, the one who's into the Hyperloop, Amelian, speaks. So Amelian is over in the UK, also saying that we're unbreakable. There's also this Melnichenko, a lawmaker over in the US. He's been around since 2002, also unbreakable. He says we're fighting here. Bereza too, I think that's his real last name, Blacker. Well, anyway, him too, from Lithuania, I think, or from some country, the Baltic states, or from Austria. He says that people that this, well, now once we get together, we'll really hit it. But Yura is at least in Ukraine. Sure, in his own house, but he can broadcast.
And really, yes, the Ukrainian mistent brings him, I'm afraid, appoints him as the chief of the cyber forces. The second one, the Ukrainian iPhone guy, is fine. He doesn't kill for fun, just shares his thoughts. And that's pretty accurate.
Well, in general, the hazel tree isn't dangerous. That's good. I'm very glad. We've listened to Yura. Who else should we show you here, dear viewers? Well, let's show Deputy Barnu 2, another hero with patches. I think he's gathered all the troops. From Pokemon to Japanese and Korean, he's got them all stuck on the car ceiling. The only thing left is to stick those chevrons on his head. Well, apparently that's an indicator of how he visits Fring, everyday friend. Frinda Barna just put on a green t-shirt and never leaves Frinda. Young Lenin looks at all this with weariness in his eyes, and apparently says that everything is weariness of the spirit.
Hours in the soul. Today I'm looking from this teleporter. I'm live on Radio 2, and we have a guest, Yenik from Israel.
Oh Lord, I'm so tired of hearing about Israel. Okay, you have your example, but there's also Israel fighting there. People are fighting there regardless of their social status. Of course, there are exceptions, but still, there are far fewer of them than in Ukraine. And this mumbling about Israel already, I think even young Lenin would have changed his hairstyle out of indignation.
It fights, develops its economy, and so to speak, develops tourism. Well, and Russia basically is falling behind. If it weren't falling behind...
That was unexpected. Yeah, this eyepiece is powerful, like maybe from Falling Russia, from the mouth of this Barney. This is of course a circus. He apparently wants to bring Russia down, doesn't know how, but thinks that now we're all going to do it.
Obviously, we're going to prophesy him, not unprophesied, and then keep preparing for war. Obviously, today we need to plan the long-term perspective of this war.
Yes, in general, in the long term, Barna is going to collect chevrons again, and he's preparing hard for all the twists of fate that await him. Well, what if he gets an underbaked pie or a not-so-tasty steak at a restaurant? Well, you see, what a blow of fate that would be, both to Barna's stomach and his mood, so you have to understand. Some people are fighting on the front lines while others are resisting low-quality food, maybe a little undercooked, maybe not well done, maybe that piece of meat has some other status. So let's sympathize with Barna the deputy, they're certainly doing their best. That's all from me, goodbye everyone. A million
imported Indians. Who has seen them? On TikTok, there's a person, either a Pakistani or an Indian, recording in English, saying there are beautiful girls here, this and that, come over, that's it. This is a classic provocation, a classic psyop. Crowds of bots are spreading misinformation. Drania is lying. Looking here, none of what they claimed is true. They post TikTok videos and more, but in the end, the Russians did their job. Unfortunately, this worked on the dumb ones. I would talk to the owners of big companies, from light industry, from parts manufacturing, from agriculture. Not in agriculture. It's not profitable. Many industries were involved in this story, but it doesn't reflect reality. So it's not as bad as everyone thinks. And not everyone will leave Ukraine. Not everyone will go far. So it's not that bad. We have enough people. We have 5 times more than we need.